Not again. Reborn again. This was the third time I'd opened my eyes to this familiar ceiling, the stale taste of dread already coating my tongue. My second rebirth, my third life. I fumbled for my phone, the screen glaring harshly in the dim morning light. August 17th, 9:23 a.m. My heart began to pound a familiar rhythm against my ribs as I started the countdown in my head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Rrring. Right on cue. The caller ID flashed. Melissa Pendleton. Same time, same call, same script as the last two lives. Melissa was the wife of my client, Arthur Pendleton. 2 months ago, Arthur had purchased a colossal personal accident insurance policy through me. The payout? A staggering $80 million. Then, on August 15th, just 2 days ago in this timeline, Arthur had died in what was officially labeled an accident. And because of that policy, my life had become a tangled, deadly mess. Twice now, I'd been murdered precisely on August 24th. Twice, my life had abruptly ended before I could see the sunrise on the 25th. The next day, August 18th, I stood inside Arthur Pendleton's house, clad in a somber black suit that felt unnervingly like a shroud. The air in the wake hall was thick with the scent of lilies and grief, real or feigned. People milled about, murmuring condolences, their faces a shifting sea of potential threats. My hand rested protectively on my briefcase, my gaze sweeping across the room, sharp and wary. I knew, with chilling certainty, my killer was among them. Melissa Pendleton stood near the makeshift altar, a picture of devastation, her sobs racking her body so violently it seemed she might collapse. I started weaving through the clusters of mourners, needing to speak with her, gauge her reaction this time around. But before I could reach her side, a commotion erupted at the entrance. Sophia Pendleton, Arthur's daughter, had arrived. Her disdain for Melissa, the younger woman who had replaced her mother, was legendary. Their encounters were less family gatherings, more declarations of war. This time was no different. Sophia strode in, her eyes, cold and assessing, landing immediately on Melissa. A cruel smirk touched her lips. Well, Sophia's voice cut through the hushed room, dripping with sarcasm. Crying your little heart out, are we? Anyone would think your father just died. She paused, letting the barb sink in. Don't wear yourself out just yet. The old man left a will, you know. A very specific one. The house, the stocks, the cash. It's all mine. Her eyes narrowed. If you know what's good for you, start packing. Don't make me throw you out. Melissa, however, was no shrinking violet. Her tear-streaked face hardened instantly. A will? Says who? You. She gestured around the room. These are your elders, Sophia. Since when do you have the right to speak like this here? Her voice rose, laced with accusation. And don't think I don't know. You had a screaming match with your father just days ago, and then poof, he has a car crash. I bet you upset him so much it killed him. As the predictable melodrama unfolded, I subtly retreated towards a shadowed corner, observing the escalating spat with a detached, almost clinical fascination. Impressive firepower, I thought wryly. Worth the effort it took to contact Sophia this time. This was my third encounter with Sophia Pendleton across 3 lives. In the first, she had sought me out, desperate and angry, while I was drowning in the complexities of Arthur's insurance claim. His policy was top tier. If the crash was ruled an accident, the payout would be immense, a massive loss for my company. So, when Sophia approached me claiming she had proof that Melissa had murdered her father, I'd felt a surge of hope. But the proof she'd provided then was nothing more than a grainy, ultimately useless audio recording. Yes, it captured Arthur and Melissa arguing, but it was about petty, everyday things, finances, dinner plans, trivial disagreements. Even the police dismissed it, stating it offered no concrete evidence of foul play or murderous intent on Melissa's part. Without direct proof, the investigation stalled, and Arthur's death was officially ruled an accident. By the time Sophia and I arrived at the funeral in that first life, Arthur's body had already been cremated. All potential evidence was gone, turned to ash. I tried to keep digging, chasing shadows and whispers, but just as I started closing in on a lead related to Melissa, I died. Found submerged in my own bathtub, water cold against my skin, lungs filled. An accident. Waking up the second time, armed with the grim knowledge of my previous failure, I acted faster. I used the information I'd gathered to contact Sophia before. The funeral. This time, together, we managed to halt the cremation. With Sophia, the legal next of kin, demanding answers, an autopsy was finally performed. And perhaps because I had initiated contact, seeking her help proactively, Sophia gave me a different recording. This one wasn't mundane. It was chilling. A raw, terrified scream pierced the audio, followed by sickening, wet sounds. I turned the recording over to the police, claiming it had arrived anonymously at my office. They quickly performed voice analysis. The results were definitive. The horrifying scream belonged to Arthur Pendleton, and the other voice, the one speaking calmly, almost conversationally, as the sounds of tearing flesh were recorded, Melissa Pendleton. Combined with the autopsy findings, which revealed injuries inconsistent with a simple car crash, the recording painted a damning picture. The police moved swiftly, and Melissa confessed. Her story poured out. Arthur had divorced his first wife for her, yes, but he'd always kept her at arm's length, wary and mistrustful. Their relationship, she admitted, had soured significantly. A month before his death, Melissa discovered Arthur had secretly drafted a new will. A will that left her absolutely nothing. The house, the cars, the stocks, every penny in savings, all bequeathed to his daughter, Sophia. Melissa felt cheated, enraged. She had married Arthur 6 years ago, a woman in her 20s tying herself to a man nearing 50. She'd given him her youth, endured his moods, managed his home. If not love, hadn't she earned some form of compensation, some security? Now, he intended to cast her aside with nothing, penniless and discarded. She couldn't tolerate it. The betrayal ignited a murderous resolve. First, she coaxed Arthur into buying the enormous life insurance policy, naming herself the beneficiary. Then, she suggested a romantic road trip, luring him to a remote, mountainous area under the guise of rekindling their flame. She confessed she initially only planned to confront him, to force him to change the will. But during the heated argument, Arthur let something slip, a secret that shattered Melissa's control and pushed her over the edge. 3 years prior, she had been pregnant with their child. Due to health complications from her youth, doctors had warned her this might be her only chance. Another miscarriage could render her permanently infertile. Melissa cherished the pregnancy, especially after learning it was a boy. Arthur, nearing 60 with only a daughter, surely desired a male heir. She believed this child would solidify her position, ensure her future. Once the boy was born, the Pendleton legacy, the fortune, would belong to them, mother and son. But mysteriously, tragically, she miscarried at 6 months. The complications were severe, leading to an emergency hysterectomy. She lost the baby, and with it, the ability to ever bear children. She had always blamed her own fragile health, a cruel twist of fate. The truth, Arthur revealed in that final, fatal argument, was far more sinister. He had orchestrated the miscarriage. He'd married Melissa primarily for her looks, harboring little genuine affection. Worse, he suspected her of infidelity around that time, and doubted the child was even his. So, he bribed their housekeeper to secretly administer medication in Melissa's food, inducing the miscarriage. In my second life, armed with this confession and the recording, I ensured Melissa Pendleton was swiftly arrested and imprisoned. I thought I was safe. I thought I had broken the cycle. But then, in the pre-dawn hours of August 24th, death found me again. This time, the official story was a clumsy fall on my way to the bathroom in the dark. Slipped on a non-existent water puddle, hit my head on the corner of a table that mysteriously wasn't where it should have been. Died from blood loss. Another convenient accident. But I knew better. There was no water. The table was out of place. It was murder. Again. Waking up this third time, the pattern was terrifyingly clear. Both deaths were staged as accidents. Both occurred in the early hours of August 24th. The killer wasn't just a killer. They were someone who specifically needed me dead before the working day of August 24th began, who stood to gain from my death within that precise time frame. August 24th, the day I was scheduled to submit the final insurance assessment report to my company. The report that would determine whether Arthur Pendleton's death was accidental, triggering the $80 million payout, or something else. My death, I suspected, was tied to the true beneficiary of Arthur's policy. So, this time, the first thing I did after the initial shock subsided was access the company records again. I pulled up Arthur Pendleton's policy details. And there it was, plain as day. Just 2 days before his death, Arthur had indeed changed the beneficiary. It wasn't Melissa anymore. It was Sophia. August 18th, 6 days until my scheduled demise. After the tense funeral, I arranged to meet Sophia at a quiet cafe downtown. The aroma of coffee and pastries did little to soothe the knot in my stomach. This was the first time across my 3 lives that I truly looked at her, observed the nuances of her expression, the set of her jaw. She was younger than Melissa, sharp-featured, with eyes that held a guarded intelligence. I'd always considered myself reasonably astute, perceptive even. Yet, this young woman, barely out of her 20s, had potentially manipulated me across 2 entire lifetimes. And quite possibly, had arranged my death. Twice. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I slid a copy of the revised insurance policy across the polished table. Her name was clearly listed as the sole beneficiary. Sophia. I began, my voice level, betraying none of the turmoil inside me. Your father changed the insurance beneficiary to you. I assume you were aware of this. I leaned forward slightly. And that secret will he wrote? The one cutting Melissa out. I have a strong feeling you were the one who tipped her off about it. He was still your father, Sophia. Don't you think orchestrating things like this? It's going a bit too far. Sophia stared at me, a flicker of genuine confusion in her eyes before it was replaced by her usual cool defensiveness. She picked up the document, scanning it with a frown. What? That's impossible. She shook her head, a short, disbelieving laugh escaping her. My father? That bastard? Make me the beneficiary of an 80 million policy? You're kidding, right? She tossed the paper back onto the table. And like you said, he was my father. A terrible one, maybe, but still. You think I'd conspire to have someone kill him for money? I met her gaze, unblinking, and produced another file. The report from the private investigator I'd hired this time around, digging deeper than before. Your relationship was strained, wasn't it? Terribly so. I opened the file. According to this, your father started cheating on your mother when you were 12. She was pregnant at the time. The stress and heartbreak caused her to miscarry, led to severe hemorrhaging. She nearly died on that hospital bed. My voice hardened. And you still expect me to believe you had nothing to do with this? Sophia, who had been looking down, snapped her head up. The defensive look was gone, replaced by a brittle, humorless smile. Ethan, she said, using my name for the first time, her tone laced with something akin to pity. You're smart, I'll give you that. But you're also incredibly naive. You hired a detective? Good for you. Why didn't you have him dig just a little deeper? Her smile faded. My father was a misogynist pig. Simple as that. From the moment I was born, a daughter instead of the son he craved, I was a disappointment. He never let me forget it. He forced my mother to drink disgusting fertility remedies, gecko soup, toad concoctions, you name it, desperate for a male heir. My mother endured it all, for my sake, she said. Her voice trembled slightly with suppressed rage. And after all that, the old bastard had the nerve to cheat on her, flaunting his affairs. She leaned back, crossing her arms. A man like that? Honestly, even talking about him feels like dirtying my mouth. Killing him? Please. He wasn't worth the effort. Or the risk. Besides, she added, a touch of pride entering her voice, my life is good now. I have my own career, my own money. I don't need his insurance. Payout. She tapped the table near the will discussion point. But the house, the stocks, the savings? That was built on my mother's sweat and tears alongside. His. That's rightfully ours, hers and mine. So yes, I'll fight for that. That's justice. The insurance? You can keep it. It has nothing to do with me. With that, she stood abruptly, gathered her purse, and walked out, leaving me alone with the lingering scent of coffee and the weight of my unresolved dread. I ran a hand through my hair, frustration mounting. If it wasn't Melissa, and it wasn't Sophia, who was it? The whole situation felt like an intricate knot, tightening around my neck. Leaving the cafe, my mind racing, I started walking back towards the office building. The afternoon sun beat down on the pavement. As I passed a row of residential apartment blocks, a shadow flickered above me. A sudden whistling sound cut the air. Crack. Blinding pain exploded in my head, followed by darkness. When I came to, the first thing I registered was the sharp, sterile smell of antiseptic. I was lying in a hospital bed, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Beside me sat my wife, Eleanor. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, filled with a heart-wrenching mixture of fear and relief. Seeing her distress sent a pang through me. Ellie, I whispered, my voice hoarse. Don't cry. I'm okay. Ethan. Oh, thank God. She squeezed my hand, tears spilling anew. You're awake. I was so scared. I'll get the doctor right away. She hurried out of the room before I could respond. A doctor examined me shortly after, explaining how incredibly lucky I'd been. The falling flower pot had struck my head, yes, but miraculously missed causing critical damage. The dizziness I felt was due to a concussion, but overall, my prognosis was good. No skull fracture, no internal bleeding, just rest and observation. After the doctor left, Eleanor returned, her expression still fraught with worry. The police were here, Ethan, she said softly. They said the flower pot. It seems like it was intentionally thrown. High-altitude object tossing, they called it. They need to investigate. She took a breath. They're waiting outside. Should I let them in? As Eleanor stepped out again, a chilling thought began to crystallize in my mind. I'd been so focused on the insurance money, on the Pendletons. That was the obvious motive, the logical link. Melissa, then Sophia. But my second death proved Melissa wasn't the ultimate threat. And now, Sophia seemed genuinely unaware of the insurance beneficiary change, and her own motives felt rooted in inheritance, not the policy payout. If the insurance wasn't the primary driver, then what was? Maybe the goal wasn't the money. Maybe the goal was simply me, killing me. Before I could unravel that terrifying thought, the police officers entered, their expressions professional but somber. They explained that, based on the impact pattern and the pot's fragmentation, they estimated it fell from the 13th floor or higher. Unfortunately, the pot itself yielded no usable fingerprints. Finding the person responsible would be difficult, a needle in a high-rise haystack. The trail, for now, was cold. They wanted to explore my personal and professional life, any potential enemies, grudges, conflicts I might have overlooked. Enemies? I searched my mind. I wasn't exactly a saint, but I generally kept to myself. Insurance could be contentious, but murder? I couldn't think of anyone I'd wronged badly. Enough to warrant a kill order. My parents had died years ago in a car accident. My grandparents, who raised me, passed away shortly after I reached adulthood. Relatives back in my hometown were distant memories, connections long severed. Work at the insurance company was stable. I'd recently been promoted to manager. The Pendleton case was the only significant source of recent conflict. My social circle was small, consisting mostly of childhood friends and a few college buddies, people I knew inside and out, people I trusted. My head throbbed, a side effect of the concussion. Faces swam in my mind, colleagues, friends, distant family. Eleanor, my wife, introduced by a senior colleague at work. From a comfortable middle-class background, an only child, strikingly beautiful. Our relationship felt solid, steady. We rarely argued. Could she? I remembered my shock, even disbelief, when she first agreed to date me. She seemed so far out of my league, elegant, accomplished, sought after. I'd even asked her once, during a quiet moment, why she chose me over her many other admirers. She had laughed, tapping my nose playfully. Well, she'd said, her eyes twinkling. You have a car, a house, and conveniently deceased parents. The perfect diamond bachelor. Then, her tone shifted, becoming mock serious, though her smile remained. Just don't you ever cross me, Ethan Vance. If you do, I'll kill you quietly. No one would ever know. At the time, I'd laughed it off, charmed by her dark humor, warmed by the intimacy of the joke. Now, lying in this hospital bed, the memory sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't just a joke anymore. As she pointed out, I was an orphan. No siblings, no close relatives left. But I wasn't penniless. My grandparents, both university graduates, rare for their time, had been incredibly forward-thinking. They'd invested the compensation money from my parents. Accident wisely. Some went towards my upbringing, but the rest? Property. They'd bought several apartments during the early boom years. Those properties had appreciated significantly. Add to that the compensation from the eventual demolition of our old family home. My net worth was substantial, at least a small fortune. And according to current inheritance laws, if I died without children or living parents, my wife would be the primary, likely sole, beneficiary. Looking at Eleanor's beautiful, concerned face when she returned, a wave of icy dread washed over me. Suspecting Eleanor felt like a betrayal, a sickness in my gut. I needed to talk to someone I could trust implicitly. There was only one person, Marcus Cole. Marcus was 6 years older, but we'd grown up together in the same housing complex, raised by our grandparents under similar circumstances. My parents were dead, as were divorced and largely absent. That shared experience forged a bond deeper than friendship. We were like brothers, bound by circumstance and understanding. If anyone in the world wouldn't betray me, it was Marcus. I contacted him as soon as I felt well enough. We met discreetly. I told him everything. The repeated deaths, though I omitted the rebirth part. It sounded insane, and explaining would waste precious time. The insurance policy, the Pendletons, the flower pot, and finally, my horrifying suspicion about Eleanor. Marcus listened intently, his usual easygoing expression replaced by a deep frown. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment, rubbing his temples. Ethan, he began, his voice heavy, hesitant. There's something I probably should have told you a while ago. I didn't want to cause trouble, didn't want to believe it myself, maybe. He sighed. But now, hearing all this, I think you need to know. He looked me straight in the eye. It's awkward as hell, Ethan, and I was worried you wouldn't believe me, that it would screw up our friendship. Marcus, Just tell me. I urged, my stomach clenching. We're brothers. You know I trust you. He took another deep breath. Okay, it's Eleanor. Back when you first started dating her, she tried to come on to me. My blood ran cold. Marcus explained it happened the very first time I introduced them. They were sitting at dinner, and under the table, Eleanor had repeatedly brushed her leg against his. He'd initially dismissed it as accidental, but it happened again on subsequent meetings. He hadn't known how to tell me, fearing I wouldn't believe him or that it would destroy our friendship. He had no proof, just his word against hers. So, he'd simply started making excuses, gradually distancing himself from us as a couple. Rage, hot and blinding, surged through me. I remembered that dinner. I'd been dating Eleanor for 3 months, felt things were serious, and was excited for my closest friend, my surrogate brother, to meet her. And all along, she'd been trying to seduce him, the woman I envisioned spending my life with, trying to betray me with the person I trusted most. If my suspicion about her wanting me dead had been a chilling possibility before, Marcus's confession cemented it into near certainty. If she was capable of that kind of betrayal so early on, who knew what else she'd done during our marriage? She probably already had someone else on the side. Hearing wasn't enough. I needed to see. Today was Eleanor's day off. Before leaving the house that morning, I'd casually mentioned I was meeting Marcus and would likely be back late. If Eleanor had a lover, today presented the perfect opportunity for a rendezvous. I asked Marcus for one more favor, to watch our apartment building from his car parked down the street. I waited in a nearby coffee shop, the lukewarm cup trembling slightly in my hands. My mind was a chaotic battlefield, part of me desperately hoping Marcus was wrong, that there was an innocent explanation, while another, darker part almost wished for confirmation, needing a tangible enemy, a clear target for my fear and anger. The deadline, August 24th, loomed like a guillotine blade above my head. Finally, my phone buzzed. It was Marcus. His voice was low, grim. Ethan, she just went upstairs 3 minutes ago, with a guy I don't recognize. The day I confirmed my beloved wife wanted me dead was August 20th. For days left, I bolted from the coffee shop, adrenaline coursing through me. Reaching our apartment, I jammed the key into the lock, heart pounding. I burst through the door. There she was, Eleanor, and a man I didn't know, standing awkwardly in our living room. He looked startled, then panicked, muttering a hasty excuse before practically fleeing the apartment. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving Eleanor and me in charged silence. What the hell was that, Eleanor? I demanded, my voice shaking with barely suppressed fury. She rounded on me, her face instantly transforming from startled guilt to indignant rage. What was that? Are you insane, Ethan? That was Mr. Henderson from the Community Outreach Program. He was just dropping off some flyers. Her voice rose. We've been married for 3 years, and you accuse me of cheating? You burst in here like a madman. She threw her hands up in exasperation. You know my parents never wanted us together. They thought I could do better. If I wanted someone else, why on earth would I have married you in the first place? Without waiting for an answer, she stormed into the bedroom. I heard drawers opening and closing aggressively. Moments later, she emerged, pulling a suitcase. Heading back to her parents, clearly. As she reached the door, suitcase handle clenched in her white-knuckled hand, I blocked her path. Eleanor, I said, my voice dangerously quiet now. I know you look down on me. Think I'm just some orphan with a dead-end job. Your parents certainly made their opinion clear when we got married. I stepped closer. But let me tell you something. I will not be played for a fool. You want to leave? Fine. But you owe me an explanation. Right here, right now. And if you can't give me one, we're getting a divorce tomorrow. Her response was swift and violent. Her hand cracked across my face, the sting sharp and immediate. Divorce? Fine, she spat, her eyes blazing. Consider it done. I'm leaving you, Ethan Vance. Be at the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow morning. 8 o'clock sharp. She shoved past me and slammed the door behind her, leaving me alone in the sudden, suffocating silence of our apartment, the imprint of her hand burning on my cheek. Later that evening, I met Marcus again at a quiet bar. He could see the devastation etched on my face and spent a long time offering quiet words of support, cliches about fish in the sea, urging me not to dwell on her betrayal. I know, Marcus, I know. I sighed, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. The logic makes sense. But she betrayed me, humiliated me. I can't just let it go. Marcus watched me for a moment, a strange, unreadable expression on his face. He seemed about to say something, then hesitated. What is it, Marcus? I pressed. If you've got something to say, just say it. It's just, maybe a crazy thought, he mumbled, avoiding my eyes. Probably stupid. We're past polite stupid thoughts, man. Spit it out. He took a deep breath, finally meeting my gaze. Have you considered forgiving her? Not getting the divorce? I froze, staring at him. The suggestion hung in the air, heavy and discordant. Forgive her? Stay married to the woman who tried to seduce my best friend, who brought another man into our home, who quite possibly wanted me dead? My mind reeled, a confusing mix of residual affection, gut-wrenching betrayal, and now, utter bewilderment at Marcus's suggestion. The pain in my chest felt like a physical blow. Marcus sighed heavily. Look, Ethan, I know you're hurting right now. Badly. But maybe just think things through properly before making a final decision. That's all I'm saying. I nodded numbly, unable to form words, my thoughts a tangled mess. The next morning, August 21st, despite Marcus's baffling suggestion, I got dressed. Sharp suit, tie knotted precisely. I was going to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Driving there, I expected to feel anger, sadness, maybe even a grim satisfaction. Instead, a strange, cold calm settled over me. My mind, detached, began methodically reviewing the situation. Current analysis. Eleanor, my wife, cheated on me. Driven by greed for my substantial assets, inherited wealth, property, she couldn't simply divorce me, perhaps fearing a less favorable settlement, or maybe just wanting it all. Staying married but removing the inconvenient husband was the cleaner solution. Hence, the plot to kill me. But even an orphan has the attention of the authorities. Murder, even disguised as an accident, carries risk. If anything looked suspicious about my death, she, as the primary beneficiary, would immediately fall under scrutiny. Therefore, my demise had to be flawless, undeniably accidental. Life 1. Electrocution in the bathtub via faulty wiring, tragic, but plausible. Life 2. A fatal slip and fall, clumsy, unfortunate, but possible. Life 3. The falling flower pot, a freak accident, a random act of negligence from above, except it wasn't random. This time, however, I had the upper hand. I knew about her infidelity before the deadline. By proceeding with the divorce, I would remove her primary motive. She wouldn't inherit if we were divorced. No motive, no murder. I would break the cycle. I would survive. That was the plan. But I never made it to the Civil Affairs Bureau. On a stretch of road lined with old plane trees, control inexplicably vanished. A sickening screech of tires, a brutal impact. Then, blackness again. When consciousness returned, it seeped back slowly, like wading through thick fog. Disorientation first. Then, the familiar, pungent smell of hospital disinfectant. Darkness pressed in, punctuated only by the faint, rhythmic beeping of unseen machines. Silence, heavy and expectant. I couldn't immediately place the date, but a deep, primal instinct screamed it was late. Likely the night of August 23rd. Almost there. Almost August 24th. I was in a hospital bed again. My body felt heavy, unresponsive. Suddenly, a flicker of movement in the peripheral darkness. A sixth sense, honed by multiple deaths, screamed danger. With a surge of adrenaline that defied my injuries, I threw myself violently to the left, rolling awkwardly off the mattress just as something sliced through the air where my head had been moments before. A soft thwack as it hit the pillow. A male voice hissed from the shadows, laced with surprise and frustration. You're awake. My blood ran cold. I knew that voice. Even distorted by the darkness and malice, I knew it. The killer wasn't Eleanor after all. It was him. Marcus. I breathed, disbelief warring with the chilling certainty. You're trying to kill me. The figure stepped partially into the faint light filtering from the hallway, confirming my worst fear. Marcus Cole. My childhood friend. My brother. His left hand gripped something that glinted menacingly, a knife. The intent in his eyes was unmistakable. He meant to finish the job. My left leg throbbed violently, injured in the crash, useless now. I was trapped, vulnerable. The knife lifted again. Marcus, wait, I yelled, desperation sharpening my voice. Please. He paused, the knife hovering. Ethan, he said, his voice low and strained. I didn't want you to know. Didn't want it to be like this. He took another step closer. But you woke up. So, don't blame your big brother for being ruthless. Look at me, Marcus. I pleaded, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. I can barely move. Killing me now would be easy for you. But at least let me die knowing why. You owe me that much, don't you? Tell me why you hate me enough to do this. I knew Marcus. Beneath the friendly facade, there was a core of deep-seated pride, bordering on arrogance. He wouldn't be able to resist the chance to gloat, to explain his perceived justifications, especially now, believing he held all the power. He lowered the knife slightly, a cruel smile twisting his lips in the dim light. He moved closer, looming over me where I lay sprawled on the cold floor. I couldn't see his expression clearly, but I could feel the contempt radiating from him like heat. He pressed his foot down hard on my injured leg. A muffled groan escaped me as agony shot up my limb. I felt a sudden warmth spread beneath his shoe. The wound, undoubtedly reopened and bleeding. "Ethan, my little brother," he began, his voice dripping with years of festering resentment. "All these years. Tonight, finally, I can breathe." His voice grew louder, harsher. "Why? You ask me why? Why the hell should you get everything so easy? We were both kids without parents, weren't we? So why did yours leave you set up for life, while mine just disappeared?" His breath came in ragged gasps. "They build new families, new lives, and just forget about the kid they left behind. My father, rolling in money, and he wouldn't spare a dime for me. I was 13, Ethan, freezing in the dead of winter, practically, begging him for tuition money. Stood outside his fancy house in clothes barely fit for summer, while he and his new family stayed warm inside. His new little brat called me a beggar, told me to bark like a dog. Damn them. I'll get them one day, I swear." He shifted his weight, grinding his foot into my leg again. "And my mother? That pathetic woman. So what if Dad hit her sometimes? Couldn't she have just toughed it out, for my sake? It's all her fault. If she hadn't divorced him, I wouldn't have ended up like this." His gaze, burning with hatred, fixed on me. "And you, always trailing after me. Marcus, like a damn puppy. So annoying. And that money your grandparents gave me for university tuition? You think I was grateful? Huh? You think I didn't see through your little act of charity?" His voice dripped with scorn. "So generous, giving me tuition but barely enough living expenses, 1,000 a month? Was I supposed to kiss your feet for those scraps? You just wanted to feel superior, rubbing your good fortune in my face." He leaned down, his face close to mine. "And your wife? Eleanor? She should have been mine. I wanted her. It was her privilege. How dare she reject me? The ungrateful bitch." He straightened up, laughing, a harsh, grating sound in the quiet room. "See, Ethan? Life's funny, isn't it? You had everything fall into your lap, smooth sailing all the way. And yet, here you are, about to die at my hands." He raised the knife again, the faint light catching the blade. "Don't worry, little brother. Big brother Marcus will make it quick. Wouldn't want you to suffer." The knife began its descent. Bang! The deafening crack of a gunshot echoed in the small room. The knife flew from Marcus's hand, clattering harmlessly across the floor. I let out a shuddering gasp of relief, my head falling back against the cold tiles. "Took you long enough, officers." I called out towards the doorway, where uniformed figures were now silhouetted. "Another minute, and I'd really be dead." "Police? How?" Marcus whirled around, staring in stunned disbelief as officers swarmed into the room, weapons drawn. "Marcus," I said, pushing myself up slightly despite the pain, my voice filled with a weary mix of anger and disappointment. "Did you really think I was that stupid? After everything? I knew it was you. I suspected it for days." "Impossible," he snarled, his face contorted in a mask of rage and denial. "How could you possibly know? How? You want an explanation, Marcus?" I said, mirroring his earlier words. "Fine. Consider it a final courtesy, so you're informed. Ghost, when you get to hell." A figure moved beside me, helping me sit up against the wall. "Eleanor." She looked pale, but resolute. "It goes back further than you think," Eleanor said, her voice steady as she addressed Marcus. "Remember that first time Ethan introduced us? When you claimed I hit on you? That night, I told Ethan exactly what happened. How you kept trying to touch me under the table, how uncomfortable you made me feel. I picked up the narrative. And ever since then, Marcus, almost every time you and Eleanor met alone, or even spoke on the phone for more than a few minutes, her phone was on. Recording. Open line to me. So, when you came to me with that fabricated story about her seducing you, that's when the real suspicion started." Marcus stared, slack-jawed, shaking his head in disbelief. "Actually," I corrected myself, remembering the flowerpot incident. "The suspicion started even earlier. Eleanor gently supported me as I shifted my weight. Remember when you visited me in the hospital after the flowerpot attack, Marcus? When Eleanor mentioned the police suspected it wasn't an accident, that it was deliberate. There was just a flicker, a split second of shock and surprise in your eyes, like you hadn't expected them to figure that out. I saw the dawning comprehension, the horror in his eyes. That tiny reaction, Marcus, that's what planted the seed of doubt. And now, since we're clearing the air," I took a shaky breath. "That flowerpot, it wasn't thrown from the 13th floor. There was no mysterious attacker." Marcus looked utterly bewildered. "What? Then how?" "I did it," I stated flatly. "Dropped it myself from a lower floor. made it look like an attack. You why? He stammered, confusion replacing the rage. To flush out the killer, I explained, my voice hardening. I knew someone close to me wanted me dead. I figured if I was injured, seemingly by accident, the real culprit might let something slip, get careless, reveal themselves. It was a gamble, setting a trap by playing the victim. And you walked right into it, Marcus. I looked him straight in the eye, the weight of our shared history heavy between us. I always thought of you as a brother, Marcus. Our grandparents helped your family when we were kids, looked out for you. I never regretted our friendship. But I see now, I never really knew you. All that resentment, that crippling insecurity, it twisted you into this. My voice filled with contempt. Frankly, I pity you. Maybe my words struck a nerve. Or perhaps it was the sight of the police closing in. Marcus suddenly erupted, thrashing against the officers trying to restrain him, his voice raw with fury. Ethan Vance, who the hell do you think you are, lecturing me? You're nothing. Just lucky. Born lucky, that's all. You think you're better than me? You kill everyone around you. Your parents died because of you. Your grandparents worked themselves to death raising your sorry ass. They were always so good to me. Why didn't you die? Why wasn't I to you? His voice cracked on a desperate sob. I swear, Ethan, you'll get what's coming to you. You'll die alone and miserable. Enough, Marcus. I shot back, anger surging past the pain. You dare bring my grandparents into this? After everything they did for you? Let me tell you something. Helping someone isn't looking down on them. It's just helping. And I will live, Marcus. I'll live a long, good life. And I'll be there to see you sentenced. And every year, on Memorial Day, I'll visit your prison cell. Or maybe your grave. Just to tell you how damn good my life is. Hearing this, a strange calm washed over Marcus's face. The struggle ceased. A slow, deeply unsettling smile spread across his lips. Is that so, Ethan? He whispered, his eyes glinting with an unnerving light. Well then, I'll be watching. You make sure you live a very long time. His smile, his final words, sent a fresh wave of unease through me, prickling the hairs on my neck. Eleanor noticed my expression. Don't listen to him, Ethan, she murmured, squeezing my arm reassuringly. He's just trying to scare you. Empty threats. She glanced down at my leg, where blood was now visibly soaking through my pajama pants. Oh God, you're bleeding badly. Let me get the doctor back in here right away to get that bandaged. Looking down, I saw she was right. The wound Marcus had stomped on was bleeding freely. He really hadn't held back. Exhaustion suddenly overwhelmed me, a heavy blanket smothering my senses. As the doctor began cleaning and bandaging my leg, the world tilted, and I slipped into unconsciousness. I dreamed strange, disjointed dreams, filled with shifting shadows and a persistent, nagging feeling that despite surviving Marcus, the danger wasn't truly over. A hidden threat still lurked, just beyond the edges of my awareness. When I finally woke properly, my first, almost frantic action was to grab my phone. My hand trembled as I fumbled with the power button. The screen lit up. August 24th, 9 a.m. A long, shuddering breath escaped me. I let my head fall back onto the pillow, relief washing over me in a dizzying wave. I had made it. Past the deadline. Past the killer. I had survived. But was it really over? 2 weeks later, I was discharged from the hospital. The car crash hadn't caused life-threatening injuries, but luck, it seemed, was still playing games with me. My legs. They felt numb, unresponsive. Apart from that single moment of adrenaline-fueled movement when Marcus attacked, allowing me to dodge the knife, there had been nothing. No sensation, no voluntary movement below. The hips. The doctors mentioned possible nerve damage from the crash impact, something complex and difficult to treat. For now, the recommendation was rest, physiotherapy, and cautious optimism. Tom would tell. Eleanor, ever attentive, worried about me languishing in the hospital. She convinced the doctors that recovering at home, in a familiar environment, might be beneficial, perhaps even helping psychologically, which could, in turn, aid physical recovery. The doctors agreed it was worth trying. Eleanor came to pick me up on the day of my discharge. We hadn't divorced, of course. The argument, the trip to the Civil Affairs Bureau, it had all been part of the charade, a performance designed to lull Marcus into a false sense of security, to make him believe his path was clear. Still, the betrayal cut deep. To think that Marcus, the boy I grew up with, the man I called brother, could harbor such venomous jealousy, enough to plot my murder multiple times. It was a chilling reminder of the hidden depths of the human heart. Yet, something still felt off. Knowing Marcus, his petty grievances and insecurities were one thing, but meticulously planning and executing murder, especially the gas leak that killed my brother, it felt almost too calculated, Too cold for the Marcus I thought I knew. His final, cryptic smile haunted me. That dream in the hospital. I couldn't shake the feeling that this calm was merely the eye of the storm. Lost in thought, I suddenly realized the scenery outside the car window wasn't familiar. The streets we were turning down. This wasn't the way back to our apartment. A prickle of unease traced its way up my spine. Ellie, I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. This isn't the route home. Where are we going? A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Eleanor's lips as she glanced at me in the rearview mirror. What do you mean, darling? Of course. This is the way home. Her smile widened slightly, turning cool, sharp. It's a shortcut I found. The scenic route. To take you back. To your roots. My blood turned to ice. Eleanor, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Stop the car. I frantically jammed my thumb against the power window button, then fumbled for the door lock. Neither responded. Child locks. Engaged. Eleanor watched my futile struggles in the mirror, a sigh escaping her lips that sounded almost like boredom. Honestly, Ethan, she said, her voice smooth as silk, laced with something terrifyingly calm. Why would I harm you? You're the one who's injured, depressed. Understandably so. She continued driving, the car climbing a winding, increasingly isolated road. You were so despondent about being a burden, about your legs. You told me you couldn't live like this. So, while I stepped away for just a moment to admire the view up here on the mountain, you tragically decided to end it all. Wheeled yourself right over the cliff edge. Such a shame. How could anyone possibly blame me? She glanced back again, her eyes cold. Besides, I specifically consulted Dr. Evans. He agreed the mountain air would be excellent for your recovery. You'll find it very restful up here. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat, tasting like bile. Eleanor, you've even got the story straight, haven't you? Planned my suicide note too. But of course, darling, she purred. Then her expression hardened, her eyes narrowing as they met mine in the mirror. But, are you really my darling? Are you really my husband? A sudden, drenching sweat broke out across my forehead. The car continued its relentless climb towards the cliffs overlooking the valley. Ellie, what nonsense are you talking about? I stammered, forcing a shaky smile. Of course, I'm your husband. Who else would I be? You're just stressed, sweetheart, thinking crazy thoughts. Let's turn around. Go home. We can work things out. This fighting, this violence, it's not us. Eleanor didn't reply, her face setting grim lines as she navigated the final turn. The car crunched to a halt on gravel, mere feet from a sheer drop. The wind whistled eerily outside. She turned off the engine, plunging us into tense silence, broken only by the wind's mournful cry. She turned in her seat, facing me fully now, her expression unreadable. I'll ask you one more time, she said, her voice dangerously low. Are you my husband? My mind raced. This was it. The final gamble. Yes, of course I am. A slow, knowing smile spread across her face. A smile devoid of warmth, full of chilling certainty. Are you sure about that? Noah Rivers. The moment she spoke the name, the charade dissolved. The air thickened with unspoken truths. There was no point hiding anymore. Eleanor, I said, my voice dropping the pretense, becoming hard, level. Some things are better left unsaid, don't you think? My name is Noah Rivers. Today marks the 65th day since I started impersonating my dead brother. 2 months ago, my identical twin brother, Ethan Vance, found me through an online ancestry database. After a lifetime of feeling adrift, I discovered I had family. A brother. He told me the story. Stolen from the hospital shortly after birth due to appalling negligence. Sold to a family far away. Our birth parents never stopped searching. Every lead, every whispered possibility, sent them chasing. Hope. When we were 5, a tip came in. A boy resembling Ethan seen in a neighboring city. They drove through the night, desperate. On the highway, a collision with a sleep-deprived truck driver. Both gone, instantly. Their parents, our grandparents, took Ethan in and continued the search for me. But raising a young child while grieving and searching took its toll. They passed away not long after. Ethan became an adult, leaving the responsibility, the hope, of finding me solely on his shoulders. Technology, DNA, finally bridged the gap decades of searching couldn't. He found me. Ethan was an insurance agent. Diligent, successful, already a manager at a young age. He lived here. I lived in another city. Working as a private investigator. He insisted I move closer, start fresh, be family. We agreed I'd wrap up my cases and relocate. But before I could move, Ethan was dead. My name is Noah Rivers. Today marks the 65th day I've been investigating my brother's murder. On June 22nd, 2 months ago, I arrived at our parents' old house, The place Ethan grew up with our grandparents, as we'd arranged. He was supposed to meet me there. He never showed. Ethan was punctual, meticulous. Alarm bells screamed in my head. He wouldn't forget. He wouldn't be late. Not for this. Recalling the address he'd given me for his own place, the one he shared with his wife, Eleanor, I rushed over. The apartment door was locked tight. A faint, sickly sweet smell seeped from under the door. Gas. Kicking the door open, shattering the lock, I knew I was too late. The air inside was thick, suffocating. Ethan lay sprawled on the floor, not far from the living room window. Scuff marks on the floor, overturned furniture. He had fought, struggled desperately to reach the fresh air, to escape. But he hadn't made it. His body was cold, stiffening. The brother I had only just found, lost again in the space of weeks. I knelt there, holding his cooling body, the reality of it settling like ice in my veins. This wasn't an accident. I knew it in my gut. My brother was murdered, and I would find out who did it. I arranged for Ethan's body to be discreetly kept at a trusted funeral home. Then, leveraging our identical appearance, I stepped into his life. Became Ethan Vance. Now, on this cliff edge, Eleanor stared at me, realization dawning in her eyes. So, she breathed. The gas leak, it didn't fail. He did die. It was you all along. Pretending. He died because you killed him, Eleanor. I snarled, the accusation raw and burning. The gas leak wasn't reported to the police. I handled it quietly. Only the killer would know the details. My glare was murderous, fury boiling beneath the surface. Ooh, scary. Eleanor mocked, patting her chest theatrically, though her eyes held a flicker of fear now. And your brother? What a saint he wasn't. We were together 3 years, and he never once mentioned having a twin. Keeping secrets, was he? Worried I was just after his precious money. Don't you dare talk about him. I warned. You're not worthy to even speak his name. Worthy? He was a fool, she spat back, her facade cracking. Sitting on all that money, living like a pauper, scraping and bowing for every sale like some pathetic little dog. It was disgusting. I wanted a handbag, just 10,000. And he acted like I was asking for the moon. Cheap bastard. Her face twisted in contempt. Expected me to sleep with him, but wouldn't even buy me nice things. Please. She paused, a cold calculation entering her eyes. But he wasn't entirely useless. A dead husband, that's the best kind. His inheritance, plus the insurance payout. I could finally live properly. Buy whatever bags I want, whatever cars I want. Her gaze hardened, fixing on me. But then you had to show up, didn't you? You little pest, sticking your nose where it didn't belong. She sighed dramatically. And Marcus? Useless idiot. Couldn't even kill you properly. Left loose ends, let you get the upper hand. A sly smile touched her lips. Still, thanks for dealing with him. He was becoming rather tiresome, always sniffing around. So, she had manipulated Marcus, feeding his resentment, aiming him at me like a weapon. Don't worry, she said, her voice turning syrupy sweet again as she reached for the handle of my wheelchair. Once you're gone, I'll take excellent care of all that lovely money. She began to push the wheelchair towards the cliff edge. In that instant, I exploded upwards. With a surge of strength fueled by grief and rage, I vaulted out of the wheelchair, landing solidly on my feet. Before Eleanor could react to the shock of me standing, I spun around, grabbing her wrist, twisting her arm behind her back in a secure hold. Noah, you're not paralyzed, she gasped, struggling futilely against my grip. Surprise, Eleanor, I gritted out. Did you think you were the only one capable of deception? I knew it was you almost from the start. Marcus was just your pawn, your scapegoat. You think killing me would be that easy? I tightened my grip. That car crash. It wasn't an accident designed to paralyze me. Then what? She stammered, fear widening her eyes. It was real, all right, I admitted grimly. But I caused it. Drove myself into that tree. Needed a plausible injury, something to keep me safely confined while I gathered the final proof against you. It hurt like hell, but it was worth it. Panic flashed across her face. No, wait. Money. You want the money, right? Let me go? We can split it. Half. You can have half. Keep dreaming, Eleanor. I spat, disgust thick in my voice. My family's money? I'd burn it all before letting you touch a single cent. I jerked my head towards the winding road below. And by the way, hear that? Police sirens. They'll be here any minute. I called them before we even reached the top. The distant wail grew steadily louder, closer. True panic seized Eleanor. She thrashed wildly, desperately trying to break free. Her strength, fueled by terror, was surprising. I struggled to maintain my hold as we stumbled closer and closer to the precipice. The first police car screeched to a halt just as we reached the crumbling edge of the cliff. Officers scrambled out, guns drawn, shouting commands, but hesitant to approach us locked in struggle so close to the drop. Then, it happened in a blur. A sudden twist, a loss of footing on the loose gravel. Eleanor's foot slipped. A strangled cry escaped her lips. Ah! And she was falling, tumbling backwards into the empty air. Strong hands grabbed me, hauling me back from the edge just as she disappeared from view. Safe. Alive. Later, wrapped in a scratchy police blanket, sitting on the tailgate of a patrol car, my legs trembling uncontrollably from adrenaline and strain, I answered the lead detective's questions. What were her last words? Did she say anything incriminating? Nothing coherent. I replied, my voice carefully neutral. Just panicked rambling, crazy accusations. Once the police moved away to confer, I pulled the blanket over my head, shrouding myself in darkness. And there, hidden from view, I smiled. A grim, silent, deeply satisfying smile. Enjoy the fall, Eleanor. If there's a next time, I'd let go again. By the end of the month, I had resigned from Ethan's job at the insurance company. My work here was done. It was time to visit the cemetery on the outskirts of the city. Time to visit my family. My parents, my grandparents, my brother. The only blood relatives I had ever known, all resting there now. During the weeks the police investigation into Eleanor's death and Marcus's arrest unfolded, I had arranged for my parents' and grandparents' graves to be moved together, creating a small family plot. Ethan's ashes were interred beside them. I had brought copies of Marcus Cole's indictment and the final police report closing the case on Eleanor Vance. I would burn them here, let the smoke carry the news to them. Let them know justice, of a sort, had been served. I planned to stay a while, sit with them in the quiet stillness. I ran my fingers over the newly carved name on my brother's headstone. 2 simple characters etched in granite, Noah Rivers. I stood there for a long time, the silence broken only by the rustling leaves. Hello everyone. My name is Ethan Vance. This was my 3rd rebirth. And finally, I survived. You see, I had a brother. His name was Noah Rivers. Stolen at birth, lost for decades. Our family searched for him for over 20 years. We finally found him, this past May. And then I lost him again. The biggest regret of my entire existence, across all my lives, is this. On June 20th, I went away on a business trip. I left my brother, Noah, waiting for me, alone, in that apartment. He was waiting for me when she killed him.